Hello Year 2, how are you? And welcome to today's reading lesson. Now, as you probably guessed, in our reading lesson today, we are going to be continuing with Fantastic Mr. Fox and looking at chapter 9, which is called Mr. Fox Has a Plan. Now, the reading skill that we're going to be looking at today is inference. Now, we've looked at inference before, but can you remember what it means? Well, yes, inference is when we use clues in the text, so what is being said and done, and our own knowledge to help us to answer questions. Now, the answers to questions, inference questions, are not specifically in the text. We can't just pick them out. We really have to think about the answers using clues from the text and our own knowledge. Now, to help us with our inference today, we have got our friend Inference Iggy. Now, what types of questions might Inference Iggy ask us? Well, Inference Iggy might ask us how someone is feeling or why somebody did something. Or he might even ask us why something is happening. And we've got to use clues from the text and our own knowledge to help us answer those. Now, can you see he's got his magnifying glass? And that is because he's a detective. And when we infer, when we use the reading skill inference, we act like detectives too, because we look for clues in the text. Now, again, like every other lesson, we're also going to be looking at some vocabulary. So we're going to be looking at a word, looking at the words around it and trying to work out its meaning. Now, over the last few weeks, we have looked at a lot of vocabulary, haven't we? And last lesson, we looked at a couple of words in chapter 8. Now, you really start to understand a word when you are able to put it in a sentence. So you understand the meaning and can use it in your own writing. So yesterday, we looked at these three words, tender, waft, and order. So tender was an adjective, and waft and order were verbs. And what I'd like you to do is try and put these words in a sentence. So one sentence for each word. Pause the video now and have a go. Okay, Year 2. So I had a go too. And let's look at the first one. Right, so the first word is tender. Now, tender was an adjective, as I said. Now, what was described as tender in the story? Yes, it was the farmer's chicken, wasn't it? It was soft and it was easy to chew, and that's why it was tender. Now, the chicken in the story was described as tender. So I went down the same route and I wrote, my steak was beautifully tender. So again, I'm looking at meat, and I've said that my steak was beautifully tender. So it's cooked so well that the steak was easy to chew and it was soft, so it wasn't tough to eat. Okay, now let's look at the next one. So the next one says waft. Now, waft is a verb. Now, what was wafting in the story? Well, yes, it was the smell of the farmer's chicken, wasn't it? It was wafting down to where Mr. Fox and his family lived. Now, what does waft mean? Well, waft means that something drifts in the air or it floats in the air, and it's usually a smell. Okay, so what smell could I write about in my sentence? Well, I wrote the smell of dinner wafted around the house. So if someone in your house is cooking a lovely dinner and it smells beautiful, then the smell will waft around the house and it'll probably make you feel even hungrier, just like it did to Mr. Fox and his family. Okay, then we have order. Now, if you order someone to do something, you instruct them to do something, you make somebody do something, you give them instructions, you command them. So, who was ordering in the story? Well, it was the farmers, wasn't it? They were ordering the people that work on their farm to surround the hole where Mr. Fox and his family live. Okay, now, if you order somebody, like in the story, the farmers were ordering the people that worked on their farm. So the farmers were in charge, weren't they? So therefore, I try to use the same sort of idea in my sentence. And I wrote, they ordered everyone to leave the shop. And by they, I either mean the shopkeeper or maybe even a police officer. And they ordered people, they commanded people, they gave instructions to leave the shop for one reason or another. So there you go. There are my three sentences. And you might have thought of completely different sentences. And that's fine as long as you've used the meaning correctly. So when you send the rest of your work into the office, could you also send me these sentences so I can see how much you understand about the vocabulary that we have looked at in our last lesson? Okay, so now let's move on to chapter 9. So chapter 9, Mr. Fox has a plan. I wonder what his plan is. Okay, you ready? Now you'll find this on your worksheet, Year 2 Reading, 12th of February, Resource 1. So if you want to follow it along with the resource, that's fine. But if you also just want to listen at this point, that's also fine. Okay, so for 3 days and 3 nights, this waiting game went on. How long can a fox go without food or water? Vargas asked on the 3rd day. Not much longer, Bean told him. He'll make a run for it soon. He'll have to. Bean was right. Down in the tunnel, the foxes were slowly but surely starving to death. If only we could just have a tiny sip of water, said one of the small foxes. Oh, Dad, can't you do something? Couldn't we make a dash for it, Dad? We'd have a little bit of a chance, wouldn't we? Okay, so there it says, could we make a dash for it, Dad? Now, a dash here is a noun, and we're going to be looking at the verb, which is dash, to dash. Now, we know that the farmers are waiting outside their home, so Mr. Fox and his family's home under the tree. Now, if they make a dash, what will they be doing? Well, they're going to try and escape, aren't they? That's what the small fox is thinking here. And if they try and escape, they're probably going to want to do it pretty quickly, aren't they? They're not going to want to wait around. They're going to want to get out of their home and run away so that the farmers don't catch them. So therefore, dash means to run or travel somewhere in a great hurry. So to run or travel somewhere very quickly. And the verb dash has 1 syllable. Clap along with me. Dash. And yes, synonyms of dash are rush, race, bolt. If you bolt somewhere, you go very quickly, or sprint. So if someone's running and they're sprinting, they're going the quickest that they can, the fastest that they can. Okay, and some antonyms of this are walk. So if you're dashing, you're definitely not walking because you're going very quickly if you dash, and you're definitely not dawdling. If you dawdle down the road, you're walking very slowly, okay? And normally you don't have somewhere to go. So you're dawdling, you're walking leisurely, you're ambling, okay? So those are antonyms of dash, which means to run or travel somewhere in a great hurry. So here I've used it in a different context. So in the story, the small fox wants to dash away so that they can escape from their home. And here I've written the dog ran off and she dashed after him. So the dog ran off and the owner has run after him, and she's had to run after him very quickly because the dog is probably quite a fast runner. So therefore she's had to dash. She has also had to run quickly and she's in a hurry to catch her dog. Okay, so let's carry on. No chance at all, snapped Mrs. Fox. I refuse to let you go up there and face those guns. I'd sooner you stay down here and die in peace. Okay, now it says here, in peace. Now, what does peace mean? Well, we know if they go out of the home, the farmers are going to catch them, aren't they? So they'll be in trouble if they go out of their home. So how will they be in peace if they stay in the house? Well, it's nice and quiet in the house, isn't there? And there's no trouble because the farmers can't get them in the house. They're waiting outside. So therefore, peace, which is a noun, and it's 1 syllable, peace, means without being disturbed, okay? So in this context, Mrs. Fox is saying she'd rather have the foxes die in peace, so without being disturbed, in their home, rather than going out of their home and being killed by the farmers, which definitely wouldn't be in peace. So some synonyms of peace are calm and quiet, okay? In the calm and in the quiet. Now we've got another usage here. So the girl read her book in peace. So she was being, it was very quiet in the room where she was when she was reading her book. And we enjoyed some peace and quiet. So lots of people say, oh, I enjoyed some peace and quiet on the weekend. Okay, that means that they had some time to just be by themselves without being disturbed. Okay, right, so let's carry on. We have got to page 35. So Mr. Fox had not spoken for a long time. He had been sitting quite still, his eyes closed, not even hearing what the others were saying. Mrs. Fox knew that he was trying desperately to think of a way out. And now, as she looked at him, she saw him stir himself and get slowly to his feet. He looked back at his wife. Okay, now here it says she saw him stir. Now we know that he is sitting in the room, but he's sitting very still, okay, because he's thinking. Now, if he then stirs, do you think he's sitting still anymore? Well, no, because the verb stir means to move slightly, and it has one syllable. Clap it with me. 3, 2, 1, stir. So fantastic Mr. Fox was sitting very, very still, and then he started to move slightly. So he stirred. Now, a synonym of to stir is twitch. So if you twitch, you move slightly all of a sudden, okay? And that's what Mr. Fox did when he stirred. Now, another context for this that's not about the book, you can say the child stirred in his sleep. So the child might have been sleeping soundly, and then all of a sudden he moved a little bit. So he stirred, maybe he rolled to the other side. So therefore he stirred in his sleep. He moved slightly from the position that he was in before. And that is exactly what fantastic Mr. Fox did. Okay, so he looked back at his wife. There was a little spark of excitement dancing in his eyes. What is it, darling? Said Mrs. Fox quickly. I've just had a bit of an idea, Mr. Fox said carefully. What? They cried. Oh, Dad, what is it? Come on, said Mrs. Fox. Tell us quickly. Well, said Mr. Fox. Then he stopped and sighed and sadly shook his head. He sat down again. It's no good, he said. It won't work after all. Why not, Dad? Because it means more digging, and we aren't any of us strong enough for that after 3 days and nights without food. Yes, we are, Dad, cried the small foxes, jumping up and running to their father. We can do it. You see if we can't, so can you. Mr. Fox looked at the 4 small foxes and he smiled. What fine children I have, he thought. They are starving to death and they haven't had a drink for 3 days, but they are still undefeated. I must not let them down. Okay, so we have got the word here, undefeated, but they are still undefeated. And he says they are starving to death and they haven't had a drink for 3 days, but they are still undefeated. And we know that they still want to escape, don't they? Even though they're really, really weak from not eating or drinking for 3 days, they still want to try and escape. So therefore, undefeated means that they have not lost yet, okay? They do not think the farmers have won yet. They still want to try and escape. And undefeated is an adjective and it has 4 syllables. Will you clap them with me? Undefeated. Fantastic. And as I said, it means not lost. Now we have the prefix, you know, when we have a suffix, it's at the end of the word. Well, when we have a prefix, it's at the start. And our prefix of this word is un, okay, undefeated. So defeated means that they've lost. And if we add un at the beginning, it reverses it. So it means that they haven't lost. Okay, so defeated with un becomes undefeated. So it reverses the meaning of defeated. And some synonyms for this are unbeaten. So again, beaten means that they've been beaten, but unbeaten means that they haven't been beaten. And then victorious. If you're victorious, you win. Okay, so they have not lost. Then we have another usage of it. Sorry, I've missed a word out there. No, I haven't. I've added a T at the end of my sentence. So it's meant to say he was the undefeated swimming champion. Okay, so he had not yet been defeated. He was the champion and he hadn't lost yet to anyone else to make him not the champion. Okay, so let's read the last few lines of chapter 9. I suppose we could give it a try, he said. Let's go, Dad. Tell us what you want us to do. Slowly, Mrs. Fox got to her feet. She was suffering more than any of them from the lack of food and water. She was very weak. I am so sorry, she said, but I don't think I'm going to be much help. You stay right where you are, my darling, said Mr. Fox. We can handle this by ourselves. Okay, so Mr. Fox and the children are off to defeat the farmers